Yahoo! I think we are live. I'm so excited. Aloha, everybody. It's great to see everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me know if you can hear me. I made sure I'm actually in charge of my own mic today, so we got to make sure that I actually mute and unmute myself. Yay! Oh, I see Chris Miller's already on. I see so many awesome folks. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. This is very, very cool. And folks from all over the world. I see we have folks, Goedenavond, friends in the Netherlands. How cool. Friends in Brazil. I saw Eileen here. It's so good to see you guys. Yay! So today, for those of you that don't know, we have our good friend Jeff Peterson here. It's going to be a really fun live stream. I'm super excited. And don't forget, tomorrow we have his backyard concert as well. So that will also be at 9 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time here on our YouTube channel. So super excited. I'm actually holding the giveaway instrument. If you're like, what's Sarah holding? This is actually the instrument that's being given away for that season finale backyard concert. Oh my gosh, Teko, all the way from Japan. It's got to be so early in the morning for you. Thank you for waking up to join us. Aww. And Matt Stead from the UK. How cool. Aloha Mark from Canada. Good to see you guys. So yeah, so I've got this giveaway instrument that I'm holding. I was tuning it and then we realized, oh, we got to go live. So I'll tune it a little bit later. Nice.
Okay, I'm going to put everyone on screen for a second.
Woohoo!
Aloha, everyone.
Hey, aloha. Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
We've been having a fun couple weeks together, actually, preparing for this and filming the backyard concert, which I'm so excited about. So I'm very grateful to Craig and Sarah for this opportunity. And we're going to have some fun today, playing a really cool song that it's more than just a song. It's really a whole philosophy about Hawaiian music. And so we'll have a great time.
No, there were so many chicken skin moments in your concert, Jeff. It was, like super magical.
We had the drama with the elements too, which is
Well, one of the things that I've told people when I've talked about the recording of the concert is like, it felt like, especially because your family is from Manoa.
Yes.
For me, it was this feeling of like the mountains being like so happy you're here, and so the wind was whipping around you, just like an embrace. I don't know. It was like, oh my God, it was a very special concert. You guys definitely will want to watch it. Really awesome.
Oh my gosh, Matt Stead just wrote that he got back from a 7-hour drive to collect a Moabetta ukulele.
What?
Wow.
That's,
Hey, aloha, Matt. I saw him when he was here.
I can't
Dude.
wait to see that. Oh yeah.
So Matt, is that for you or is that for some lucky person in the UK that's getting that more better? That's
awesome.
so cool.
We gotta drag Chuck up there one of these days.
Yes. If we can get him off of that island and take him to
Yeah.
the
Matt,
British
did you get
Isles.
to see Jake? He's touring right now, right? He's touring around the UK.
I think he saw him in Bristol.
Okay.
I think I remember,
Nice,
but we'll
nice.
see. He'll probably say in the chat.
Yeah. And you mentioned Chris Miller. He's tuned in. Aloha, Chris. How's it? I get to visit with Chris often when he's here on Oahu, and so.
He and Ellen are everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I always check their Facebook and it's like every night live music.
Now this is great. A little different setup here. You can see Jeff and Sarah off to my side there. You know, one of the things that we had to do when we were supposed to be resting last month was I was like, oh, this is the perfect time to rearrange the studio.
Yeah.
No, but this is going to be fantastic. Again, welcome to everyone who's just joining us. This is going to be a really special workshop today. For those of you who are watching the replay and not joining us live, don't forget you can still grab your packet, but we are showing everything on screen as well. Sarah, did you actually want to mention what the new Scholar packet?
Yes. So we have finally changed the name of the diaper packet, though he is not potty trained yet. We're getting there. So we're calling it, Craig decided, the Scholar packet. So in the Scholar packet, you have everything that Jeff has supplied in the standard. And then I did 2 arrangements of chord melody for my Yellow Ginger Lay. And for that, I did one that uses simple triads, simple chords. And then I did a sort of jazzier one that uses some slightly more advanced voicings. I haven't done the video yet. I will be doing the video this week, and you will get it by this weekend, those of you that have purchased that packet. But for that, I'm gonna take you through both arrangements, and actually, like I do with all of the mini lessons for the extra packets, I always kind of add extra stuff while I'm teaching it. So I'll show you some different arpeggiations that you can do, because I don't always like putting all of the extra flourishes in the chord melody written materials, because I think it's important to learn the basic version of the song first before you embellish it. Because sometimes when you see all those embellishments written out, it can be really daunting. So for me, I'm giving you the base version, but in the video, I'm actually going to kind of talk about, oh, and if you do this during this, or you could try using this during this. And I might even show you some different voicings too. I've got a really fun game plan for this one. I'm really excited. I'm using the same key, so you can hear how it sounds when we use regular triads versus if you want to play more jazzy voicings, if you will. So that's what's in the Scholar packet.
Awesome.
Chord melodies for My Yellow Ginger Lay.
And other housekeeping things, we have a big announcement for our ukulele retreat Hawaii for next year. Next week we'll be unveiling those details.
Yes.
Artist Work students will be doing a lot of VEs this afternoon, but we also have a couple big lessons coming up that we'll talk about early next week as well. And I enjoyed seeing a lot of the metronome mini challenges coming through the queue as well.
Yes, thank you guys for working on with your metronomes.
And actually, speaking of online lessons, Jeff, would you mind actually talking a little bit about Ukulele Corner?
Yeah, so I've created an online school for learning Ukulele Corner, ukulele with a dear friend of mine, Simon Powis, and he's a Yale graduate. He's studied education for a long time, and I've really enjoyed working with him. We've created a full curriculum for learning. There are 20 units, 8 grades, so it's graded material that you go through. There's a core curriculum you work through of learning fingerstyle ukulele, both reentrant and low G tunings. But then also there are these libraries, and libraries are really fun because you have all sorts of things in different styles: jazz, Hawaiian music, classical music, theory, technique, and strumming, basics, fundamentals. So it's something I really enjoy putting in constantly. It's evolving, and I have some books that are associated with their practice routines. Each of the 20 units ends with a practice routine. And it just gives you a clear path on how to go about learning, whatever your interest is in music, whatever direction you're going in. And we actually have a discount code that we're offering this weekend. If you go Ukulele Corner 25, that gives you 25% off to subscribe and become a member.
Nice.
And that's good through July 9th. So make sure you've got to sign up early in order to be able to get that Ukulele
And
Corner
I think
25.
We do have one giveaway for tomorrow's concert, too?
We actually do.
Yes.
So tomorrow, if you join us live, we've got a giveaway for one of, if you would like to join Jeff's lessons, which are awesome. We are giving away a subscription to Ukulele Corner tomorrow in the live chat. So you'll definitely, if you want a chance to win, you'll want to join us.
Now we still have 6 minutes before we officially start. What I figured we'd do is just play a little teaser of what to expect tomorrow for his backyard concert. And this is our season finale concert as well. So we're just really blessed to have Jeff join us for this. So here's a quick snippet of tomorrow's backyard concert. All right. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. It was such a fantastic concert to be
Yeah.
there live for, and I got to watch it like 38,000 times editing
For
it.
editing it, yes.
Right, right.
But it was
And-
still
That's cool.
fantastic.
And I got to listen to it multiple times because we do have the digital program available. And I thankfully, Jeff was kind enough to kind of give me the lead sheets so that I could have a starting point for getting all of that set up so that you can actually try to play along with Jeff. I think there's
Nice.
only one song that's not in there because it's a classical piece and it goes, I don't know, it was just one of those where it was like it made more sense not to actually include that one. But everything else is there. And it is a slightly longer concert too. You guys are going to be like,
Yeah, I think the run time is about an hour 20.
yeah, it's,
Nice.
but it's so good.
Yeah.
It's going to fly by. But so just so you know, the digital programs are up and running. It has box charts for the songs that he goes through and plays, including some originals. So you'll definitely want to pick that up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
and-
for writing that out too. That's
yeah.
great. Yeah.
It's fun actually going through and like playing along with you and going, okay.
Yeah, can Jeff actually demo the
Oh, yeah.
giveaway ukulele?
Oh,
So
yeah,
this is
absolutely.
A beautiful ko'oloha.
Beautiful, cool, and we're all just saying what a incredibly beautiful sounding instrument it is. It's really clear. It's very balanced, and it's made with, I believe, it's acacia wood, right? Is that it's similar to koa?
Well, for the sides and the back, yeah.
Yeah. But it has this real clarity that comes out through the high voices. It's lovely. So who is going to be the lucky winner of this tomorrow? But it sounds great strum. Or fingerstyle, both together.
Nice.
So nice.
Yeah, Koloha, so excited and so grateful to them for.
Yeah.
Yes,
Their
if you're
support.
watching this live or watching the replay, you can still get a packet.
Yep.
And if you're, we know some people that are still having a lot of troubles during this kind of post-pandemic times. Let us know if you need a packet, and we'll hook you up.
Yep. Yeah, we always have some that we can. That's part of why we have the scholar packet. Those folks, thank you for purchasing it. You've paid it forward, so we
Yes.
can give away free packets to those that just they can't afford it at this time, and that's totally fine because we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to join in the
And
fun.
I see Pacific Winds.
I know, I saw that
music
too.
from-
Pacific
so
Winds is
Eugene,
on.
Oregon was my stomping ground for college, and I stayed up there after doing music. That's where I really grew as a musician or as a ukulele player in actually Eugene.
Nice.
Yeah, some really great memories from Pacific Winds. Spent a lot of time there. We were building a little studio to teach out of, and then I met Sarah and I left Eugene.
I know. I totally took him away.
But Neil Chin was moving into Eugene a few months after, and kind of took that over. So that I'm really grateful that was available, and it all worked out. Yeah. So again, fantastic event for today and tomorrow. This is the celebration of Jeff Peterson weekend.
Yeah.
All right.
I like this
Yeah.
weekend. It's fun.
And again, thank you guys out there for your support. And again, we keep seeing it more and more. But the ukulele community is so special and so incredible, and it really is such a joyous group to be a part of. So thank you guys so much. All Pacific Winds is no more.
They retired.
I thought they were continuing. I thought someone picked it up. That's okay. We'll chat later. But
chat, yes.
yeah, some really great memories with Pacific Winds.
Yes.
I thought someone took it over. My fault then. But I will have to do some research on that. But let's chat soon. Send us an email. I would love to find out what's going on. Now, Jeff Peterson again is a fantastic, as you saw the clip, a fantastic musician, and he is so incredibly humble and down to earth, and it shows in his amazing teaching as well. And one of the big benefits of moving to Hawaii has been, being able to catch up with people that we typically only see in passing, like at the NAM show. Or
well, that was with Jeff. With Jeff, it was always, "Hey, it's so good to see you.
Right.
Oh, I'll talk to you later. Okay." And then there was never later.
And it's always been a passion of mine to try to expose and just connect more musicians from Hawaii to the world, because everything is so isolated here, right? And plus, when you live in Hawaii, it's kind of hard to travel sometimes, because why would you leave Hawaii? So this is our way of kind of bringing some of these folk to you and presenting them in the best way that we can. And Jeff has been such a pleasure to work with and to get to know. And I know we'll have some future collaborations in the future as well. But without further ado, here is Jeff Peterson.
All right, aloha everyone, and thank you so much for joining. We're going to have a lot of fun today. And we are here in Manoa Valley, and a very special place to me. My ohana comes from here. And so we're going to learn today a piece that I call Kani Oke Kai. It can also be called, that just means the play of the ocean, or play of the ocean. There's a concert series called Ke Kani Oke Kai that happens at the aquarium down in Waikiki in the summer months, and I've played there many times. I also performed for many years down the beach from there, right at the foot of Diamond Head, this beautiful restaurant called Michelle's, right next to the outrigger. And there's this incredible beach there. I had the best seat in the house from where I'd play, just looking at the coastline and watching the sunsets from Waikiki. And so with that thought and the way that that beautiful ocean is in there, I want you to imagine that as you're playing the music that we played today. Imagine that part of Waikiki, if you've ever been there. That's my favorite part of Waikiki. It's this little oasis outside of all the craziness of the center of the, right in the main part of Waikiki Beach. Kapiolani Park and all that area around Kaimanahila, Diamond Head, it really protects this one little beach area. It's really lovely. So we're going to look at a song that uses some fingerstyle technique, and it only uses 2 chords. But I thought what we do is get really deep into learning these 2 chords, and where can you play them in different parts of the fingerboard? How can we do variations over this short, repetitive song cycle that really is the foundation for a lot of what evolved to be the sound of a lot of contemporary modern sounding Hawaiian music. Post-Western contact. If you think they're the different eras when instruments were first introduced in the islands, the ukulele in 1879, the guitar in 1830 with slack key style, but even before that with some of the missionaries coming in and sailing ships. There is a certain sound that evolved, bringing in some elements of Hawaiian culture mixed in with elements of Western culture. And so just the thought that there's a chord progression, that's a Western sort of concept that came in. And in the key of C, the basic 2 chords we're going to use are C and G7. And we're going to play a cycle that goes through 5 bars. And so I want to look at first, before we even play the piece, this is like an idea to start with that you can then, over years, you can spend time with this progression, get it to be like deep part of your soul. And you can keep adding to it over time. You might come up with your own variations. And if you've never improvised before, this might be your gateway into trying to improvise. So let's first look at the simplicity of this progression. It's 5 bars. The first 2 bars are C. So you'd count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Then we go to G7. Then G7 back to C, 2 counts each. That's the cycle. If I did a simple strumming pattern, down, down, up, G7, G7, C. And we call it a vamp or a tag. Often at the end of the phrase, there's another G7C. So basically, it's sort of what you call a call and response. There's a phrase, then the G7 chord is a response, then there's a vamp. So let's just try to play that together. I'll play the first theme as it's written very slowly so you can hear how it works against those chords. So once again, the strumming pattern that I was doing there is just over C and G7 in first position. And I'm just simply doing 1, 2, and 3, 4, and then repeat. I'm just using my index finger to strum, G7. Back to C. Now I said this is a 5-bar progression. 1. Here's the second bar. It's good to get to know the feel of a song and the form, getting to know the structure of the chords. This is what you're going to improvise over, and you need to know this flow and start to feel it naturally. So top of the form. It goes by so fast, right? Here's the second bar. Here's a third bar. It finally changes to G7. G7 goes back to C. Now, through the simplicity of this, there's all sorts of things that can be developed over the progression. And it's a really great way to start using some of the techniques that are really thinking of going back to the early days of the slack key tradition, some of the ideas that come from that. And so if I play this theme, I'll try to play through just the first theme. You can practice by strumming along if you want, and just so you can start to get this in your ear. Here's the main theme. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll repeat it. Hear that G7 chord going back to C, and there's a vamp. It's a 2-beat vamp, 2 beats per chord. I'll just keep cycling through this. You can start to get it in your ear and start to get the feel for it. Now, if you watch my right hand, you'll notice that I'm alternating with my thumb. If I just only play the bass part, I'm using reentrant tuning here. I'm playing the lowest 3rd string note and then also the 4th string. And I start with the 4th string. So it goes 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. Then I switch. This becomes the heartbeat of the music. And every time there's a downbeat, your thumb is playing a note. So it fills in the space of accompaniment. Now I'm playing above that a basic arpeggio pattern that happens. So 5-bar structure, 2 bars of C, 1 bar of G7, then G7C, that repeats G7C, 2 bars each. And so that cycle is really the building block of what led to a lot of the sound of contemporary Hawaiian music. And it can be played like there are fancier strumming patterns. You often hear faster tempos. It can be played really slow or nahe nahe, very relaxed tempo like we're doing it now, or it can really take off. There was a great guitarist named Sonny Chillingworth. He did a version of this progression with his own variations. He called it the Wiha Swing. Ray Kani did a song called Punahele, much slower, much more laid back, but still had a lot of action going on. Before him, Alice Namake Lua was an incredible, she taught ukulele, she taught guitar, she taught Hawaiian language, she taught hula. She was an amazing educator at a time in Hawaii in the late 1960s and 1970s when there was this, suddenly the culture was embraced by the younger generation, and she was really the catalyst, along with Mary Kavena Pukui, who had this brilliant memory and wrote down Hawaiian proverbs that her kupuna taught her. She wrote down the Hawaiian language and created a dictionary for the first time. She was also a brilliant songwriter, along with Alice Namake Lua. So think when you're playing this progression, you're not just playing a song. This is really the essence of a tradition. And even though it seems it's very simple, in structure and form, it's really the building block. A lot of what happened from here, this 5-bar progression was extended to 10 bars, and that became the standard form of a lot of traditional Hawaiian songs. And there's just a verse that keeps repeating. The lyrics change, between verses, but there's this typical 10-bar phrase. So imagine if we just extended the C for 4 bars, and then the G would go for 3 bars, then 1 bar of C, G7, C. That would make it a 10-bar progression. And this idea that there's a little vamp at the end, I've always wondered, you look at so many other types of music, the turnaround, like in jazz, is built right into an 8-bar phrase. A lot of phrases are 8 bars long. Why did Hawaiian music sneak in the extra 2 bars and 10 bars, right? What's going on? I think it's for the hula dancers, because at the end of each verse, you don't want to just start telling the story of the next verse. There needs to be a koholo, and it's just time to just clear the air before the story continues. And that is reflected in the music. It also gave an opportunity for like steel guitar players and soloists to have their little pa'ani, or their little chance to get some action. Right?
Now, quick question for you, Jeff. For those who are a little bit unfamiliar with some of the notation with the hammer-on and the slides, could you go over that just...
Yeah, so I'll zoom in here a little bit on the score, and let's look at, there's a bunch of information written in this first measure, right? What's going on with that? So the letters, P-I-M, you'll see there, that stands for, it comes from Spanish, and this goes all the way back to the Renaissance era, of how fingers for lute players and then guitar players and vihuela, and before the ukulele was around, even the braguinha will have this notation from the 19th century. P is pulgar, I is indice, M is medio, and the letter A is annular. Every now and then you'll see Q for pinky. So what P means is play with your thumb. I is index, M is middle. So those all translate to English except for a P. Just remember that's thumb in the right hand, right? So a great way to practice something to start out with, if we take this first measure and just make it into a right hand exercise, just play all zeros or hold the C chord, but play that pattern. And you have to play the appropriate strings, but it basically goes thumb, index, thumb, middle, over and over again. So thumb on the 4th string, index on the 2nd, thumb on the 3rd, then middle on the high string. And so what you feel is this transfer of energy and motion from the thumb to the finger. Now, if you've played ukulele a lot just using your thumb, that's the most powerful tool to play chord melodies. There's so many things you can do with your thumb playing, whether you're playing strum notes or individual melody notes. Now what you can work on, if you've only worked on that before, is trying to, even just using thumb and index would work well for this piece. You just transfer, you move the little unit of thumb and index from the 4th and the 2nd to the 3rd and the high string. And kind of sneak it in so you can see. Versus, I like using multiple fingers. There's less motion with the hand, and there's a lot more versatility that you'll get with that in the long run. So those are what those letters are. Of course, you've probably seen chord symbols. So the C, the letter C above the staff, that means that this reflects the C chord. Then if you look at the tablature and the center notation too, you'll see in the second half of beat 2, there's this number 2 to 3 in the tablature on the high string, and there's a line over that. That means it's a slur or a hammer-on. Hammer-on, you play the 2nd fret, and then your 3rd finger hammers down on the next note without playing again with your right hand. So the right hand, if I just use my thumb so you can really see, I just play once and then do the hammer. If it was in reverse order, there could still be the same line above or arch, and that would be a pull-off. The trick with a pull-off is you want to set up the finger that you're going to release to, unless it's an open string. That's 3rd fret to the open string. But if I'm going to go to the 2nd fret, I'd want to have my 2nd finger ready to play. Now, a little bit later on, if you look in the line right below, actually in measure 5, see there's a little slide between 2 and 3. So the first time we did a hammer-on, this is a line. You play the note and just physically move the same finger up. It's called the slide. You can practice going to various distances, but this is just really close by. It's just a half step, 1 fret away. And if you play a G7 chord, that 3rd finger is right there, ready to move to a C. So a slide makes sense there, as opposed to earlier, we're playing a hammer-on to a C chord. You could slide that as well. A very similar kind of sound. But in that case, earlier, it was easier and more sort of practical to do hammer-on. Now, if you look up, the last thing that you can learn from the notation here is looking at the standard notation. Check out how you can see those numbers, the number 2, number 3. As I scroll through the standard notation, you'll see some other numbers here and there. That's telling you which fingers to use in your left hand. So for example, when you play this G7 chord, you're going to use your first finger to play the note F, which is the first fret of the second string. Second finger is going to play the note D. Third finger is going to play the note B. I like to have like a lot of clarity in arranging when I do them to know which fingers to use as you play. And sometimes, though, the thing about the ukulele, there's so many possibilities of what could work. You could play this, like I mentioned, just with your thumb and index instead of using middle. There often are multiple ideas of what you could do with your right hand and also with left hand. But there are a couple of basic philosophies I like to use if you just want to keep these in mind for any future sort of playing that you do with the left hand. I try to have my left hand parallel if I'm playing a lot of melodic lines and scales. Whenever you play something like a G7 chord and you have to have 2 notes on the same fret, I tilt my hand back slightly to allow the lower finger to get near the fret wire. I always try to aim right behind the fret wire to get a good sound. If you play in the beginning part of the fret, sometimes you get a buzz. It doesn't sound so good, right? But if you play right next to the fret, you barely have to press down. I have at Ukulele Corner, I mentioned that we do a lot of practice routines. At the end of each of the 20 units that we have in the curriculum, there's a very detailed practice routine that works on technique, but also getting to know the fingerboard and all these sort of techniques and many more that we looked at. One I like to do is actually intentionally buzzing notes. And it might seem like, why on earth would you want to do that? It's so that you can learn control with your left hand and not squeeze like a vice grip so your hand gets tired. So I can actually, there's a point, if you play a note and it sounds perfect, let's say if I play the first fret of the high string. If I start letting go, right there, it buzzes. If I let go a little bit more, you just get that inconvenient, unfortunate clicking sound that if you've struggled playing a B flat chord, for example, and that high string, that's a killer, right? Learning this chord at first. The main mistake I see a lot of students do when they first play this is the hand is leaning back. So where you're actually making contact on the high string is way back here. It's by that early part of the fret. Remember, you want to play right next to the fret wire. So rotating your hand around in this case would be really helpful. I sometimes try to keep this part of the palm closer to the neck. We're so accustomed to doing this. Yeah, Craig is so yes. That makes it so your pinky doesn't have to stretch. The index finger is strong. It can do your stretches. Instead of so many people try to do this, try to reach forward with the pinky, I try to get my pinky comfortable, then the strong finger does the stretch, and I can still keep this arch. I see a lot of people lock the back knuckle of the pinky, right?
Ouch.
You'll immediately get rid of that by coming in closer. And so being able to think of the hand rotating back and forward like this, really, you can use that full extension. But with that in mind, I'll do a little chromatic scale. Hear how each note is buzzing a little bit? I know it doesn't sound very good, but it's actually training your fingers to relax so much that when I want to have a nice tone, I just put this tiny bit more effort in and it sounds perfectly clear. From that buzzing sound, a little bit more, and you can get a warm sound. Another thing with left hand is I always try to keep my thumb about behind the second finger. It's a very common, I see a lot of students, as you change position, the thumb stays back, the elbow comes up, and it adds tension. So keeping the thumb, if you're at a change position, moving up and down the fingerboard, I think of a magnet connecting the second finger and the thumb so that it feels the same wherever you are up and down the neck. So anyway, that gives you some ideas, basic concepts I like to use with the left hand. Whenever I have 2 notes that are moving across the same fret, I try to use different fingers unless I'm using a bar. That's another very common thing. Instead of jumping, you're not going to get sustained, but if you use different fingers, you can get a lot more sustain. So that's another basic concept of the left hand I like to use. So let's go back to, I want you to just try to feel this progression a few more times. I'm going to play the first theme. If any of you are ready to give it a try, you could just experiment, start looking at the notes. Otherwise, just keep doing the strumming pattern we did, down, down, up. So I'll strum with you first, then I'll play the melody. So let's try from the beginning. We're just going to play the first 5 bars and loop it around a few times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Down, down, up, down. Second bar, C, G7. G7 goes back to C. G7. I'll play the phrase. C. G7. G7 back to C. You start to feel the groove of the piece, right? You start to feel the flow of those. This is the heartbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all with your thumb. So this is a really good exercise in getting independence between the thumb and fingers. So when you start playing the melody with the first phrase, I was deliberate in trying to keep the notes separate. So you never actually play and this happens throughout the majority of the piece. Whenever you play the bass note, the melody note's mainly on upbeats. So to get that going, let's try that right hand pattern now. And so for the right hand, couple basic ideas that I like to think of for the setup of the right hand is to have the thumb extended out in front of the index. Instead of back here, this I do use if I'm strumming and doing sort of a jazz. You definitely want your index finger to play off the fleshy side there. And I think of 2 basic hand positions, a strumming position over the fingerboard, and then with this little adjustment back, I slightly tilt the wrist and see what happens, how the thumb comes out as I do that. So often I think strumming, finger style. And often I'll play, as you play more over the fingerboard, you get a warmer sound if you wanted to change the tone. You can really take advantage of hand position as you get back towards the bridge. They call it ponticello, it's bright. This is called tasto, or dolce, sweet, to play over the fingerboard. But generally, I keep my thumb about right at the beginning of the fingerboard here, out extended, and I try to have a C shape so that I'm curved a bit, sorry. And I move my fingers in from the back knuckle. Instead of moving this way, I try to have a C shape and move towards the back of the hand. So you actually could end up by touching the back of your fingers here. So a way you could just warm up your right hand to start with this, if I put it back on the string, you could plant your thumb on the 4th string. And I'm just gonna use, mainly in the song, index and middle are often playing the top 2 strings. So I'm gonna put my index on the 2nd string, middle on the high string. I'm gonna curve them, and then I try to let the index flex a little bit and the tip joint flex. If it's really stiff, you're gonna wanna pull straight up like this on the notes. This uses a totally different set of muscles than the back knuckle. If I try to do this and wiggle my fingers from this knuckle, they get very tired very quickly. But if I keep it as a C and move, it's much stronger. So the concept is I'm trying to make that C shape here and move towards the back of the hand. Now if I do this pattern, it goes 4, 2, 3, 1. Another thing that I like to do often, instead of just flying from nowhere into a note, which I see a lot of people do, you'll get so much more control over your sound if your hand plants on the string. Watch what happens. As soon as I play with my thumb, watch my index finger. It's ready to go. As soon as that finger plays, my thumb's ready to go. I call this sequential planting. As soon as you play with one note. So if I'm going quickly, and if I stop at any given spot, I'm ready to play the next note. This will take a little bit of time if you haven't done it before. It's a tricky concept, but it gives you so much more control. I think of 3 stages of playing a note: contact, pressure, release. Contact, pressure, release. And it's so common, like a Hail Mary, you might just kind of fly through the note, right? But if you can make that contact with the string, you'll feel it. You'll have more control. You'll have this split instant in time to decide, am I going to play loud or soft? Am I going to play warm or bright? Another thing that I use, I have fingernails that are angled from left to right so that there's a bit of a ramp here. And I try to touch the string on the left-hand side of the nail where the fingertip is. That'll give you a warm sound, and you won't hear that buzz of the nail hitting the string. Then as I move off the string, it slides across the nail. That gives you volume. And it also, by doing that, I'm allowed to have this angle with the way that my hand is angled and see where I'm playing off this side of the nail. It's like the stereo now. If this is bass and this is treble. If I want it brighter, I can take out some of that highness and the high pitch resonance by how I tilt my hand. But in general, I like a warm sound, so I like playing off that fleshy side of the finger. So let's try to do this arpeggio pattern. And so really slowly, it goes 4, 2, 3, 1. Believe it or not, throughout the whole piece, that's mainly what we're going to be doing. We might move our fingers, the melody notes, to different strings, but I tried to write this piece as an exercise. And when I play it, you'll see I play this at the concert that you'll watch tomorrow. I just play other things, and I do all sorts of variations using the song form, but this is the foundation. This is where you start to get those ideas. So let's try this together. It's going to go 4, 2, 3, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Fingers are, as I mentioned, P, I, P, M, which means thumb, index, thumb. You might wonder, like, why don't you just write T instead of P? Come on. Right? But it goes way back to the Spanish heritage. But what you can try to do is get this going. This is a really nice accompaniment pattern. Before you play all of the different phrases in the song, you might just try to do your progression. This is all the right hand has to do. Those slides and hammer-ons are going to give you the little bit of variety and melodic variation. So let's try it together really slowly. So we're going to do C for 2 bars, G7 for 1 bar, then G7C, G7C. Ready, play, and slow. 1, and 2, 3, 4. Second bar. Now let's change to G7. And then back to C, G7, C, then bam. And actually I'm counting it, sorry. It goes 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Counting the ends really helps. G7, 2, and 3, and even eighth notes. You can do this with swing like a lot of Hawaiian songs have, but typically this progression and this sort of style that we're doing is played with even eighth notes. When it starts getting really fast, you can, it's basically using the same pattern. Strumming, sometimes you'll hear the Hawaiian double strum. That sort of accompaniment is something that's common. But this finger style pattern works at any tempo. Now, all you have to do to create this melody is just add in the hammer-on and the slide, and then we're good to go. And as we change the chord, watch how it easily just evolves into what we played, into something with a little bit of variation. And one of the things that adds the variety and expression into Hawaiian music are these subtle things. Slides, pull-offs, hammer-ons, harmonics, different open strings, different variations in chords, adding in maybe a 6th chord or a 9th or things like that. but this foundation of what we just practiced is all you need to start with. What we're going to do now, let's try to practice that hammer-on a few times. And then we're just going to play this first measure. And what we're going to do, instead of starting right on the C note, the first time we're just going to do that little gallop. And so this song, that when I mentioned double strum a second ago, and you heard that bum ba da dum ba da dum ba da, those little gallops, that's what these 16th note hammer-ons and slides are. They give you this little gallop in the song. It's a very Paniolo style, right? Cowboy style. So if I keep repeating that phrase, 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and... Try that for a bit. You can just repeat doing the hammer-on. Remember how I talked about the right hand, the motion coming from the back knuckle? Same thing with the left hand. If your fingers are really flat to the side and you're trying to use the middle knuckle or keeping the finger flat, it'll still work. You can still definitely get the hammer-ons to come through. But if you're curved right above the note, look, if you notice, if you look at my hand, you can't see the fingernails if you're looking directly in at the hand. If you do, that means your fingers are a little flat. You're going to lock this middle knuckle here, or the tip joint knuckle, and it's harder to move the fingers. If you keep it nice and curved, I can move from here, and you get really clean sound with very little effort. So that's what I want your goal to be as you do the hammer-on, to try to move that way. Now when I go to the G7 chord, I release the note and then put it back, then slide it back to C. So in measure 3, you do G7, take off the third finger for the end of 4 here, put it back, slide back to C. And in measure 5, I just end on beat 4. I don't play the high string. I go 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4. 1. So there's a little bit of an end of a phrase by leaving a tiny bit of space there. So with that in mind, take a second and practice, and I'll see if any of you have any questions that we can look at.
There is one question. 4th fret, you use your 4th finger on the A string.
Yeah, often when we're playing the 4th fret, I'll definitely, it depends on where you're going with it, what the song, I usually think of, as far as deciding on what finger to use, it depends on what the music is before and after that moment. If I'm going to be going to the 7th fret, I might use my 1st finger on the 4th fret. I'd be in 4th position. Let's say I'm going to be playing an A chord. But if I'm going to play an A chord here, I would use my pinky there. If I'm playing a G chord, and I'm going to add that 4th fret, I'd use my 3rd finger. It depends what position you're playing and what other fingers are used. Let's say if I'm using, like as a passing tone, I'm playing an F chord. I noticed we had someone tuned in from Brazil. I might sneak in my 1st finger, moving up, or the 2nd finger. So the point is, it depends which finger you play any given fret with, and that's why when I write out arrangements, I try to be very clear of writing all those numbers for the left-hand fingerings by the standard notation. It really can affect how you would decide to play, and it really smooths things out. And I always look for economy of motion, good connection, what I call guide fingers. Like this is a guide finger. When you use the same finger to move to another place in the same string. So the 1st finger is the guide finger here.
And that was so far, that's been the only question regarding the piece. There was a question earlier I didn't have a good chance to ask, which is somebody said that they use their thumb sometimes.
Oh yeah, you do
on
thumb
the G.
over.
And is that a bad thing to do?
It's fine. Yeah, a lot of people use that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends on
I always feel like it depends on where you're headed.
Yeah.
Or where you've come from.
Yeah, it can really help do amazing things. You can get these cool bass lines. Especially, I would use it more with a low G tuning than a high G, probably. And by the way, this piece works fine with low G if you want to play it that way. I might switch the bass line around for the C chord. So you get a C going to a low G. You hear the root more clearly. Usually you start a chord by playing the note that names it when you do an arpeggiation. If you notice, in this case, we're starting with the note G over a C chord, but because it's the high G, it doesn't really stand out that much. If you play low G, it's going to sound a little muddy. So switching the bass line around, that's all you need to do. Everything else is fine.
Perfect. That's it.
Okay.
So
There's an interesting story I once heard from Tommy Emmanuel's a great guitar player, and he loves the thumb over technique on the guitar. And he could reach, he'll be playing, like imagine a G chord, his thumb will be way up at the 7th fret on a guitar. And someone once asked him in a workshop, well, how did you get your hand to do this? Well, I just changed my hand. He holds up his fingers and the thumb goes whoop.
Oh my God.
From years and years and years of stretching. It's like he did torture. He pulled his thumb until absolutely amazing. But it shows, I mean, when you practice something again and again, it actually kind of shows why you want to practice the right way so you don't cause like problems with your hands, right? And I actually had to stop playing music for about a year when I was in college. I was going to USC. I was playing in so many groups. I was starting to get into the recording scene in LA. I played in a rock band, playing all these clubs and doing albums and stuff. And then I was playing in jazz groups and studying with all these teachers, studying classical music. It was so exciting, but I overdid it. And a big part of it was the things we don't think about often when we're playing is posture. I thought it was my hands, and I was gripping, that buzzing exercise. I needed to practice that because I would put my thumb over here and I would bend notes and dig in and do crazy things, which works fine. You can still do it in a way where you're relaxed, but the most common source of injury for a lot of repetitive use is curving your wrist too much when you play, using too much tension with the hands, right?
Yeah.
Curve the fingers and not the wrists. Look at this. This could be a little bit tilted, but not like that. Then the other is shoulders, right?
Thank you, Jeff. This is like what we talk about.
We try to
This is stuff
hone in on all the time because it's these little things that make a difference, especially when you do them over and over and over.
Yes.
And it sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
It really, really does. No, that's fantastic. Yeah, this made me so happy today.
And another thing is, like, how many times are you trying to look at the frets? It's almost like you're outside looking in.
Yeah.
trying to be able to. It's possible to play notes in the high string. Let's say if I play this little chromatic scale. You can be so far back that I can barely see the high string. I'm just kind of looking at an angle. I'm seeing the back of the neck here as my point of reference. But just by seeing that much and having my shoulders back, having my neck relax more, I can still play the notes. If I needed to jump to the 5th fret, I don't need to be with my head way up over the fingerboard, right? So that's another thing to consider, is just keeping your shoulders back. And even, it's gonna naturally, when you really get into it, you might start hunching over a little bit. I do that all the time, but I do a lot of stretching when I'm not playing. So if you're practicing, maybe every 15 minutes or so, make sure you get up out of the chair and stretch your shoulders back. I like putting my arms behind like this and stretch. That's a really good stretch. I like a door stretch. Going through a doorway, you can have your arms low, medium, or high, and just lean into it. That just brings the shoulder blades back.
And one thing I wanted to mention too is that there's no one way of playing, right? There's no one exact thing that everyone has to do. So you will find things that work for you and you can tweak and make it comfortable for you. But there are some global things that always come into play. And one is, as Jeff said, 99% of the issues I think we run into is because we're gripping too hard typically. That affects everything from our tone to our efficiency to our, how clean we're playing. So I love how when Jeff mentioned practice making that buzz with a lighter touch, because typically as you guys know I say start with 0% pressure and then just add enough till you get it to ring. But this is also a great way of, again, if you can practice making it buzz on purpose, building that control and building that nuance
Yeah.
feel in your fingers, that is gold. So
Well, and I think the
Yeah.
other thing too to keep in mind also with this is there's no like this is the way you must play,
Yeah.
but there's ways to play that don't cause you pain, and so
Yeah.
that's something that we always get asked about. So definitely like. If something hurts, look at posture first, because a lot of times that's the culprit. Look at how hard you're pressing. I found for me, sometimes it was where my thumb was that actually was causing the pain, where it's like, oh, I need to change my hand position. And sometimes even just like a half an inch can really make a huge difference. That's it.
Yeah, and I also think that spending a lot of time in your practice of working on these things is really important. And the only way to retrain your hand, or if you're first learning for the very first time, just to develop any sort of skill, is very, very slow, focused practice. And what you want to try to do, and often I have students do this, is just remove as many of the other elements of playing a particular technique as possible. So if you're going to work on buzzing, just work on single notes very slowly if it's just one pitch. If you're going to work on the idea of planting that we talked about with the right hand, just play open strings. If you're working on relaxing your hand, just practice a scale. Let's say if I do an F scale. Also, I might try, I'm trying to alternate index and middle. I might focus just first on getting that in my right hand to alternate. Or if I'm going to use my thumb. Whatever the technique would be, choose a right hand technique that is so familiar that you don't have to worry about it anymore. So you can really then focus on left hand position, have a goal of playing right behind the fret wire, know where your thumb, like Sarah was mentioning, where's your thumb position, and see if you can do it consistently. If you make this a regular part of your practice, instead of just diving in and trying to play repertoire, you'll actually make a huge amount of progress. Then it'll be so much easier to play the repertoire that you want to play, and you'll be able to learn a lot faster that way.
That's totally, I always say, take it one hand at a time
Yes.
when you learn something.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
awesome, Jeff. Thank you.
And so looking at this piece, what can we, from this first phrase, how could we do that sort of practice? How could we make this piece into more than just learning a piece, but learning a technique and a variety of techniques? So I would practice the right hand arpeggio. That would be one concept. I'd work on connecting G7 and C, thinking about rotating my wrists slightly. And I would just very relaxed practice that. Remember I talked about guide fingers? I'm thinking, okay, the third finger is the guide finger. I would then think about the technique of a hammer-on, and I would just play. Once you do one thing, you can make it into an exercise. Maybe I'll do 3 to 4, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, various combinations. But when I do this, notice my fingers, another goal that I have in mind is distance away from the string. I call it flyaway fingers.
Yes.
Or if you try to show shaka all the time when you're playing, right? Like, how's that cause? But if you keep your fingers curved, a good pointer I have often, instead of releasing notes up, I release them slightly into the hand, and it relates to what I talked about with the right hand. You know how I mentioned the C shape moving towards the back of the palm? Think of the same thing with your left hand. If you weren't playing on the fingerboard, move your fingers back till you make a fist like this. Then when I play, if I release a note, moving the pinky slightly in keeps that back knuckle curved. Instead of moving up, it's going to straighten the finger, and then it's going to be more, you know how I mentioned often you might lock that part of the hand? That comes from being here. The only way you can move when your finger's straight like this is straight up in the air. Totally different set of muscles, takes much more energy than rotating forward, getting the curve, and then coming in slightly. So as I do this motion, I'm keeping that in mind. I'm from above the note, I'm like a helicopter going to the launch pad, straight down, slightly into the palm. So just in one short 5-bar phrase, you have a nice right hand exercise, you have the concept of guide fingers and hand position with left hand, and then slur technique, whether it's slides or hammer-ons. Now, if we move on to the next phrase, basically the next two parts of the piece are just variations on the chord progression, and this is where you start having fun. And you can do just about anything. I'm including a worksheet with scales and how to connect C and G7 chords up and down the neck, the interval of a sixth, which is very common in Hawaiian music. The first thing that we're going to do here is move to third position, keep the right hand pattern similar, but now we're going to alternate index and middle on the high string. I'm going thumb, index on the high string, thumb, middle on the high string. So I'm alternating. So that's the first thing you can try. Plant your thumb on a lower string. See if you can just alternate index, middle, back and forth on the high string. Once that's comfortable, those are upbeats. 1 and 2 and 3. This melody creates this really interesting sound with all these upbeats playing in the melody while they're downbeats with the thumb. But it's that same technique, thumb, finger, thumb, finger. I'm going from the 3rd fret, and look at the standard notation here. I'll try to enlarge this a little bit. See how it goes 1, 4, 3, 1 on the standard notation? Those are the fingers that you're going to use. You're going to use your 1st finger, then your pinky on the 7th fret, then the 3rd fret, or 5th fret with the 3rd finger, then 1st fret again with 1st finger. So turn that into an exercise. Just try to play those notes, ascending and descending. 3, 5, 7. If you could use your 2nd finger, right? But 3rd finger feels very comfortable. And this will work on getting this little gap to feel comfortable between a fret between the 3rd and the pinky while still keeping the pinky curved. So you can focus on that as you do this. Are you doing this? If so, rotate your hand around. If you place your 3rd finger flat against the 5th fret, it's very common for there to be a gap here. What I want you to try to do, to get a good left hand position, you close that gap, slowly curve the finger towards the floor, and your hand will be perfectly set up. A fan shape happens where you notice how the index finger, I actually have a callus on this side of the finger. Pinky's on the opposite side of the finger. So I'm not playing dead center with the outer fingers. And the main thing to try to avoid is playing on the left-hand side of the pinky. I'm trying to actually play on the right-hand side of that. That's what sets up this hand position. So once that feels comfortable and you can start moving, then all we're going to do is play the bass line. Now, many ukulele players would play with this technique. Extending index finger, that's absolutely fine. Touching the soundboard. Like Ota-san, if you watch the way he played, Eddie Kamai would play it this way. It works fantastic. So keep that in mind, like as Craig mentioned earlier, there's so many different techniques that you could use. But the concept here I'm going for is alternating index and middle. And then when you build the rest of the C phrase, 3rd string, or 3rd fret, open, 3rd fret, open. On the high string, and 2nd string. So if I play that just with the melody, that's the pattern that you'd get. Then when we change to the G7 chord in the next measure here, I'm going to use the 3rd finger to 2nd, then 3rd finger is the guide finger. It's going to sneak underneath to the 2nd fret. This is a tricky phrase. And it creates this really cool chromatic phrase. And so notice how I just move my 3rd finger back by pivoting. Remember when I said you play 2 notes on the same fret? Really parallel, but I use a lot of forearm rotation. It's just like you're opening a door. This sort of motion is going to get you from this parallel position back and then parallel again. So watch my left hand forearm rotation. Back, forward. Now you can do this with a lot less motion, barely moving, by kind of collapsing the hand like an accordion, stretching out and in. That's another sort of concept. And I use combinations of both, but I'm generally just trying to minimize the amount of motion. I'm using just a little bit. If I played it faster, you wouldn't notice as much motion, but it's really good to start with to get the concept, really rotate back and really get forward, just so you get comfortable moving. And especially most people are uncomfortable with this part of the hand closer to the neck. So really try to get that comfortable. And so that, once again, that can become another exercise. One thing that's cool, as soon as you get to the vamps are always the same. We're back home. So then you get the whole second section going, and it's going to sound like this. Now, one thing that I didn't mention that is very, very important with the right hand, articulation, and how loud or soft you play. So if we were to try as an exercise to get a lot of control over your right hand, let's very slowly go back to our pattern. In general, throughout the piece, I like to try to keep the bass line on the softer side. But you can try to accent. Let's try to do an accent with index. Just put in a little bit more weight into the string. Remember I mentioned contact, pressure, and release? When I want notes to stand out more, you can use more force, but sometimes like you're on a trampoline, just bouncing a little bit deeper into the trampoline than playing will give you more depth and tone. And when I just grace the string, it's soft. So if I want to accent a note, let's say I'm going to accent middle now. Watch how I press down a little bit more with middle. Index. Middle. Thumb. So you can really change the character of a phrase by how you apply pressure with each individual finger. So that can be another thing that you practice with your right hand. Listen to when I play the vamp. I'm going to get kind of kolohe, Hawaiian style, rascal when I do the slide. I put more pressure into that like little whip going, right? Wiha! So by having that sort of control with your right hand, you can express more with your music. Let me try to do, I'm going to go back and play this phrase. Soft, build, more, whip on top, less, soft, more melody, then bass, building, strong, less. That all had to do with pressure with the right hand. So if I was to, once again, go back. Louder, gradually softer, getting that sort of control so you can do rises and falls, crescendos, decrescendos, accenting. Index, right? Hear that index? That totally changes the character of a phrase by how you accent. Try it real slow. I'm trying to go for balance here, nothing accenting. Now I'm going to accent the melody more. I'm just whispering those bass notes. I call them ghost notes. I'm ghosting them. So there's so much you can learn from this technique. Now it's much more difficult to do this if you're only using your thumb. By using individual fingers separately on strings, you get more control over separation of parts. And so that's a big part of this piece, is hearing the bass line and the melody separately. So let me play the first two sections again so you can get the sound of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, from the top. G7, remove the third finger, back to G7. Guide finger is going to slide. let's repeat that. Back to the top. C, hammer on. I'll accent that. I'm accenting the notes in the high string. You hear a melody there. Now I'm going to switch to third position. That means my first finger changes to the third fret. Now I'm ready for this next phrase. Switch to the third finger, first position, bam. Now you can repeat each section twice, switch back to the first finger. Let's build a little more this time. More drama. Dig in. Less. Let's go back to the beginning. The cool thing about this song form, you can mix and match. You're eventually going to start adding in your own variations. This is just getting you started. Now I'm going to go right to the second section. You can jump around as long as you keep this form going. Here's the measure 3 is a G7, measure 4, G7 to C, bam. All right, so how is that feeling for everybody so far? Do you have any questions? Is this making sense? Is it sinking in? Are you having fun? Let us know.
Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up too, I'll put everyone on screen for a second. Depending on where you are on your ukulele journey, this might be a lot right now to take in. But again, because it's recorded, take your time with it. And as Jeff kind of built it from the beginning, there are so many nice kind of exercises that you can do to enhance these techniques and just to make it second nature at that point. And then it's about filling in the blanks with the hammer-ons or slides and just creating from there. But another thing I wanted to mention is if you ever felt like you're at a plateau and you're just like, oh, my songs are just feeling like the same. We always talk about dynamics, but this is a great way that Jeff kind of mentioned. You can approach one single note so many different ways and it conveys a completely different feeling. If you ever feel like you're in a plateau, this is the kind of stuff that you want to try and change up a phrase to make it different feeling for you. And again, we always talk about that nuanced touch. For the artist work students, that 1, 2, 3, 4 exercise where we had different notes that you emphasize within that phrase, this is the exact same type of thing. So again, we're building the ability to hone our control over what we're doing with the ukulele and not just playing note for note for note, but actually creating and having a reason behind how we're approaching those notes and hitting those notes. So again, this is just fantastic things that you could dial in just part of what Jeff is going on about for months and work on that. So the song is the bonus that you can use all these things for that song, but it's not the end goal. For example, there's so many great things to kind of work on throughout this workshop that I think is just brilliant.
Yeah, that's basically one of the main things I try often with my teaching is to have pieces that are set up, they're fun to play. You can just play the piece itself and just enjoy it and not have to think about all these other things. But there's that opportunity where there's potential. You can really expand your abilities and your knowledge of music. And I find so many different things come to life when you start thinking about those nuances in music. Do you ever get nervous when you have to play in front of other people? One of my ways of not getting nervous is instead of thinking about, oh, I'm being judged, people are listening, oh, I sound terrible, I lose myself in expression of music. All that other stuff disappears. And I learned this after lots of trial and error. I just get lost in the piece and in the way what I'm doing with my hands, and there's a conversation that I'm thinking about beyond just the notes, and immediately for me that helps me to relax and it helps me to really connect with the music. So what I suggest all of you do is, I've talked about a lot of different things already, but what you can try to do is have some way of keeping track of. I have progress journals that I like students to have at Ukulele Corner. So I highly recommend that you write down something, sort of some structure of what we're talking about here. So what did I talk about again with the right hand? Just doing that simple arpeggiation pattern. Accenting, getting control, the C shape moving towards the back of the hand, relaxing the tip joint. There are all these little pointers that you're not going to pick up and they're not going to sink in the first time you hear them. But if you write it down and you set some goals for yourself and say, okay, maybe over the course of the next month, in my practice schedule, even if you're only practicing, you know, I have so many students that are so busy, they say, well, I have about 15 minutes to half an hour a day.
Yeah.
What should I be practicing? If it's written down, you'll have a clearer path of what to do. And then I also tell students often to sometimes don't practice, just play for the joy of playing so that you don't feel kind of dragged down. It's a slow process of learning. So I think I always love just saying, okay, I'm just going to have some fun and jam and play the pieces that I love to play. And I don't care if I'm making mistakes or all these things. But having structure to how you practice, writing it down and having goals, and they're general concepts that you'll go back to again and again. And if you focus on those individually, that's the main point here, is to pull them out of the piece. If you haven't done hammer-ons before, if you're trying to play this and you're just getting a clunking sound, right? That everyone goes through that when you first play. Just focus on that motion. And we're trying to train our fingers to do very, very specific things, and it takes a lot of slow, repetitive practice to get muscle memory, to get the hand balanced. I remember I had a great classical teacher, and I would take a lesson, and I would spend all these hours practicing. I was so into it, and I'd get back to the next lesson a week later. A whole week would go by, and the first thing that she would say is, oh no, your hand position is still off. You didn't get what I was trying to tell you last week. I might have learned a whole bunch of new music, but I didn't get the point of what I was trying to do. Oh, no. And so that's the big lesson I got from that, is to really know what you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes that's the big question, like, what are you trying to do? And if you haven't done it before, and you don't know about hand position and what feels good and what works best, it's going to be difficult to find it. And so that's why we're here, to try to help you and reinforce things. And I find I love watching great musicians play, because you feel that there's that freedom and the expression is more important than the technique. And it almost transcends what the instrument is. I love hearing, great pianists play, for example. And there's so much that can be going on at any given moment. So if I'm playing the song, I might think of, I might have a conversation in my mind. I like to think of all these layers of expression. I sometimes think of the ukulele being like a little orchestra. And so here's the bass section, and then here's the melody. I think of the parts separately. I think of, I like to actually sometimes even work out dynamics very clearly. Other times I like to be kind of free with it. Let me play the first section a bunch of times, and I'm just going to improvise, not with notes, but I'm going to improvise with expression. And I'm going to play it real slow. Very subtle, but each time I couldn't resist. I did change rhythm a little bit. Sorry. But I love doing that, and I love thinking of this sort of, like a lot of jazz musicians do this. We think in terms of lead sheets. You have a concept of what the melody is and what the chord progression is, and there's so many possibilities of how you could subtly change things. And this is a big part of Hawaiian music, is there's freedom in the music to change the expression.
We had one question that I thought was an interesting one. So we have somebody in the chat who, due to her work, she can't grow her fingernails.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for somebody who really can only use their the fleshy part? How can she get better dynamics and things with just flesh?
You can still, you don't need nails to have, nails will definitely give you more brightness and more volume at times, but you can still hand position brighter this way, warmer over the fingerboard. Don't be afraid to play over the fingerboard. You get a really sweet tone. Then the concept, like the most important thing, even if you're playing just in one position, is that concept of control with the fingers, using more pressure into the string. So you could try, like a really good exercise is plant, thumb, index, middle, and ring on high string. This really helps your right hand to relax. And if you're not using nails or you use nails, it's still the same technique. You still try to play off the fingertip. And what I'm going to try to do is play an arpeggio. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can just try an accenting exercise. So I'm going to accent the thumb. Index. You can still get that same control with your fingers, whether it's with nails or not. Ring. Thumb. Index, middle, ring. And so I think the best way to make, have you ever heard this sound? That's pulling up on the note, and it's great if you're playing blues. But most of the time you want a warm sound. When the string is vibrating this way, it's not going to slap against the fingerboard. By moving your finger back into the hand, you can still press down and that's what gives you this nice sweet tone, and release the string in a way that it vibrates this way. If you're pulling up on the note and you try to play loud, you're going to get that snapping sound. So another thing, and that's using a totally different set of muscles. That's not using the back muscle. You're extending the finger instead of pulling it back in.
Awesome.
And,
great tips.
You know, just a quick reminder too, when we're talking about dynamics and making one part of it louder, remember, if you're already at a really high volume, you can only do so much with that part you want to emphasis. So again, what Jeff did as when he emphasized the thumb, he actually brought his other fingers way softer as well, so you have even more wiggle room to play with. So don't forget about that as well, because sometimes when we think about making something louder, we only focus on that one part getting louder and not
bringing the others back.
And that's the hardest part of the whole thing, is getting the separation with the fingers. So that exercise. Another thing I really quickly I'll mention about this is just playing one note at a time. As you leave your fingers down, leave all the other fingers planted. Typically, the thumb's going to be easy to move, but this helps to relax the muscles in the hand. This will give you that control, so you can play louder or softer with any given finger. I'm just going to move the index, but I'm still touching the other fingers. Now I'll just move middle. I'll just use ring. But having the other fingers planted as you do this really helps the hand to relax. So that's another, just a short exercise that I recommend.
Perfect.
Thank you. That's an excellent answer to that. Everybody's saying thank you so much.
Cool.
So,
good.
Oh yes, and the one who asked says thanks a million. So.
Yeah, actually, I love the tone of. If I could, I would play without nails all the time. But I think nails are just there. They do give you more brightness and volume. But I love the sound of just that warm sound. And thinking of, we all love Benny Tong and his playing. When he does chord melodies, it's all flesh.
Yeah.
All flesh. He'll switch back to this hand position. He basically uses the two hand positions. He doesn't use ring finger as much as index, middle, thumb, index, and middle, resting the pinky. Led Ka'apana does that. Many different people do that. Herb Ota does that, right? So there's so many techniques that can work, but when you watch all of them play, their hands are relaxed. They're really at ease playing the music. They've found something that works really well for them. And so I love Benny's sound when he starts doing the fleshy sound with chords.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, I had one more thing I wanted to mention too. Is Jeff mentioned some people, we only have 15, 30 minutes a day to actually practice with your ukulele, but that doesn't mean you can work. That doesn't mean you can't work on things while you're doing other things in your day. For example, if you have some time and you're at a red light, for example, when you were thinking about internalizing a song, try to hum the song that you're working on, because even just going through the motions and getting that in your head and vocalizing it, you're going to get more familiar with the patterns, you're going to get more familiar with that melody, and all those little things add up so much. You know, and Jess said, sometimes you don't necessarily need to play to practice, you know, but having these things throughout your day, I promise it adds up in ways that we don't think about. And so there's tons of space throughout your day to practice without actually holding your ukulele.
I find I can play, I know I have a piece memorized if I can visualize the left hand.
Yes.
I have a hard time visualizing the right hand all the way through, but I can clearly visualize the left hand. And then, there's a puka there, there's a spot I don't know. That's the first thing I'll go and practice.
Yeah.
And a good thing about this way of practicing, you'll hone in on those things. You'll become a better listener too. I think a lot of students should all spend more time listening to music instead of just playing it. If you're going to play a version of a song and there's a lesson to study, listen to the performance of it. I like to, even before, I learn a lot of music by ear and I do arranging. And I sometimes will write a lead sheet to start out with. It might be in a different key than I decide to arrange in. But training your ear to be able to pick up things without an instrument in your hand. I'll be able to, you start to, if you're interested in getting to know chords. Oh, that's the 4 chord, that's the 5 chord. It takes a little bit of time, but you'll start to be able to identify chords. You might be, that's definitely the 1 chord. We're back home. There's a weird chord. I have no idea. I'm going to have to learn that one later. But, there's a 5 chord. You'll start to it'll become obvious as a listener. You also can train tone and expression, all those sort of things that are really hard to reflect in the music by listening to the artists that you love. It gives you that direct connection. So if you're in your car or stuck in traffic, you could practice visualization. I had a friend even built a little mini ukulele to practice his right hand alone.
Nice.
You could take your ukulele, just have practice right hand. But just make sure you don't cause an accident, right? Run a red light or something.
And that's true. Like the whole thing about, when you're playing a song and there's a certain chord change that sounds really unique and special. For me, I remember it so clearly, the 1 to the dominant 3.
That's a nice change.
And I was like, what is that? Because you don't typically see that, but it's used so much. And I kept, what is going on? So, being deliberate, understanding, why it sounds the way it does, or so know that jump, what does it make you feel, so that when it happens again, it's easier to jump right into it and go from there. But there's so many things that we can do throughout our day. Yeah,
you can tell, thinking of Hawaiian music or jazz music, is it a swing rhythm or is it even eighth notes? Being that sometimes it's tricky when you're hearing to know what's the feel of the song. Is it 6/8? Does it have, what's the character of the music? That's a good thing to be able to listen for too. And if you can start to pick out as you're listening to a recording, listen for the high notes, listen for just the melody. Listen for the bass note. Let's say it's a group. Sometimes the easiest way to find a chord is listen to what the bass player is doing, not the ukulele player. And be able to identify bass notes. And those are often the root tones. Not always, but very commonly, they're the root tones of each chord that's going on.
And actually, speaking of listening to, this particular piece you actually played in your concert.
Yes.
So take some time when you see that song pop up, take some time to really listen, hear all the different variations that he's doing, listen for the dynamics, because you know the song form, or at least you're comfortable with the song form from this workshop. And it'll be great to be able, I always feel like if you learn about a piece before it's played for you, it's almost like you have insider knowledge, and it's more fun to watch and more fun to listen to.
Yeah, a lot of people that don't understand jazz and they won't listen to jazz so much. It's like I've watched cricket before and I have no idea what's going on. Like, what are they doing? It's kind of like baseball, but
kind of.
So it led to. But same thing. Once you start to know, there's a song form, and as a listener, and even classical music, if you listen to Mozart and he's writing in sonata form, there's some rules that are going by. And as a listener, if you're aware of those, it makes the whole experience of listening much more engaging. So with jazz, what most people do is you follow, okay, here's the A section, oh, it's repeating. Here's the bridge of the song, we're going back to the A. Oh, there's a key change, and oh, now someone else is soloing, they're starting again. And oh, here comes the melody. There's certain things you listen for.
And I also love, like, when you're playing with other musicians around you, and you go through a different transition a little differently. You can hear a gasp, like, ooh. Like,
Right, like, whoa. That,
Yeah.
yeah. Those are the great moments, right? But
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
Yeah, yeah.
Matt Stead says, even I don't understand cricket and I play it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. No, this was fantastic.
All right. Well, let me show you the last, there's the last variation that's here.
Woohoo!
All right. And we're going to go crazy with our hammer-ons here. So I'm going to zoom in to this. We're playing the same cycle. We're doing the same thing of a bass note to a melody note like we did before. But now we're going to alternate on the second string, then the high string. So first thing I often do is remove all those numbers and make them all zeros, take out all of the slurs and play them as eighth notes. So we're just going to play with the right hand, fourth string to second, third string to second, fourth to second, then third string to high string. So the first thing I do learning this is just get the right hand going. Thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb, index, thumb, middle. Fourth string to second, then the very last note is the high string sneaks in there. Now we practice our hammer on the high string. Notice here I'm using 1 and 2. You could use 2 and 3. There's a very clear option here to change fingerings, but I was deliberate to use 1 and 2 to do the hammer on. And this phrase is often played. There's a great guitarist named Fred Punahoa, and he taught Sonny Lim and taught Led Ka'apana, created this whole tradition that is really this fun Kalapana style of music that is played. And this piece is perfect in that style. And usually this is played much more syncopated, but I made it really steady so we don't have to do anything too fancy with our hand that's different. And it's gonna do the little gallop. Feel like you're sauntering, not quite galloping, right? Picking up speed. So you can work on it at different speeds going up. But that's it. I'm doing this hammer on again and again. And we just do that for 2 bars. So we go over the C chord. I use my third finger for that high note, and I might accent that. Let's try that together. So real slow. Ready, and play. And 1D, and 2E, and 3E, and 4E, and repeat. There is a whole 15-minute practice routine right there, right? It's just working on one phrase at a time. If you're working on this piece, don't always practice from the very beginning. You might want to start from particular trouble spots or new phrases. Learn it by section. So many students I have can basically play through songs when they have the sheet music in front of them, but they always have to start at the beginning. You can't start right in the middle, and that's a really good test if you're really getting to know a piece. You could visualize right from there. Oh yeah, I got that spot. I've worked on it separately. It feels good. I call it chaining. You learn a phrase, then you chain it back and forward, and you build out from there. You just learn little sections. The next part of the chain is measure 13, and we're going to base this on our G7 shape. But now, a very common thing that's done in a lot of types of music, but a lot in this style of Hawaiian music, is to do these little gallops. From any open string, a hammer-on to a fretted note. You'll hear this in country music as well. A little gallop going with the G7 chord. And first I leave the third finger off, then I put it back on. So it's going to go. We're back to our original pattern with the right hand. But now we're adding in this other phrase. Then it does that one more time in the next measure. Second fret, then back to C. and we play the high string twice. Then we do our good old vamp.
Yeah.
So this is the fun phrase, and this is like you're really taking off. So the whole phrase sounds like this. G7, C, vamp, repeat. Accenting those notes on the high string. So it's just a variation over the chord progression. That's the main thing. When you're learning those jazz songs and you're learning a lot of the Hawaiian way of playing, what we call taking pa'anis or soloing, you still follow the structure. That's for getting, like each song, it's like it has its own roadmap and framework. And often, so many songs are built on short cycles that repeat like crazy. That's all the song is doing. So this is just another way of expressing that cycle. My right hand isn't doing anything different than before, just different strings perhaps, but it's the idea of thumb, finger, thumb, finger. It's this whole thing. Interesting, right? It's the left hand that makes it sound interesting, right? So you could just start by doing that, getting that comfortable, and really, whenever you have these 16th notes, if you subdivide 1D and 2E and 3E and 4E and that really helps you to feel the spacing of the notes. Then when you do over G7, you get to start by holding the chord. It's getting comfortable. Finger independence. Can you leave a G7 chord down and just lift off your first finger and back? So first thing, you make that into an exercise. I have a exercise I call the Gecko in the desert. Have you ever seen those geckos when the sand is super hot and they have to raise up 2 feet? Then they have to raise up the other 2?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's try the Gecko in the desert exercise. So we're out there in the middle of the Sahara, let's say, and it's just blazing hot. Or we're at Sandy Beach even, and one of the little geckos goes running by. Let's move our first and second finger off. You could do this anywhere. I'm on, let's say, the 3rd string, or I'm in 2nd position. Just really remove those fingers, leaving the other 2 down, but barely pressing down. I would get a muffled sound with the other fingers. I'm trying not to grip. I'm just hovering on the string. Eventually you can put the pressure down. Let's try to move down 3 and 4, or move off. Move them as a unit. Pretty easy when you're moving the consecutive fingers, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. How about 1 and 4? Not bad. 2 and 3? You might try this and other fingers move around. How about 1 and 3? Yikes! Now that gets a little trickier. I have a little secret for that. You move one, then in an instant move the other when you first try it. Then it's set in your mind, and then you can move them together. But I might first, let's say if I do 2 and 4, I'm going to move 2 and then 4. Then it's set, and I can move very quickly. But that separation is a concept that I use all the time with left hand. Fingers as needed. And let's say I'm going to go from a C to a G7 chord, and I only need to play this note first of the G7. I'll put that down. I don't always try to land on the chord, especially when playing fingerstyle. You have this extra little moment that you can move. So once again, the tricky part of this is going to get 1 and 3 to move, and then 2 and 4. And if you try them back and forth, it's really great finger independence exercise. 1 and 3, 2 and 4.
So what's funny about that, Jeff, is that
Yes.
years ago, when I was on tour with Aldrin Guerrero, that was actually an exercise that he taught, and it was such a wonderful exercise. The only difference is that we actually brought each set down, so 3 and 4, 1 and 2, and
you can start playing notes with them.
And then the 2 and 4, 1 and 3.
Nice.
So we call it the spider exercise.
Yeah.
It's such a it's one of like the best exercises,
Yes.
bar none, that you could do, especially
I think he's got a cuter name for it, though. I like Gecko
I know,
instead.
especially though if again you're at a red light, you can do that with your thumb and
Totally.
fingertips,
Yeah.
just to get it going, because
Just keeping this little shape with your hand, getting comfortable with that when you're not playing, this little C shape is such an important thing to do.
Now, I'm going to jump back for just a second, excuse me, because we had a question, which was, when you were doing the one where you were adding in that last variation, excuse me,
Yeah.
is it still, excuse me, is it still always PIPM?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just
Yeah.
wanted to get it from you.
And remember that so many people just play with thumb and index the whole time.
Which
You can play the whole song doing that, but I'm trying to emphasize using the different fingers, and I really like the idea of alternating. It doesn't have to be set in stone that you always do it. There are many times when I'll repeat a finger, but it's just a general thing that I strive for, is alternating creates a smoother sound for me and more relaxation in the hand. So if I do that, let's say I'm going to go from the 4th string to the 2nd string. You can practice thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb, index, thumb, middle. Or move my thumb to the 3rd string. I'll play the high strings. One thing we haven't had to do a single time in this piece, is just so essential, is being able to play thumb and finger together. That's something you also want to work. Old timers in Hawaiian music call that a pinch, right? You're pinching the notes together. But this whole piece is set up to play alternations between thumb and fingers. So alternating with thumb and fingers, then alternating index and middle. Hey, I think we got the whole song now, and yeah, now you can play basically the form of the song. After you play that section that we just did, the 3rd section, we go back, there's a DC al coda. That means you go da capo, you play the top, and you play to where you see the bullseye coda sign at the end of bar 5, and you jump down and play the ending. The ending is just a few more vamps. The last one slows down. You can still repeat the first theme twice. You can still take that repeat. But then remember, this is just a template for what you're going to do. I want all of you, your assignment is to try to, over the next course of a few weeks, see if you can come up with a variation or two over this. And before we try something like that, though, let's try to play through the whole thing together. If this is beyond your playing ability, what I always try to do with arrangements is there's always accompaniment, there's always melody. You can work on parts separately. So if you're still more comfortable just strumming, just back us up, back me up playing the rhythm here. And remember, you could do the down. That pattern is very typical. But you can change the pattern as much as you want. The typical, you often do down, down, up, up, down. The only time that doesn't work in this case is when you have to switch, because there are 2 chords in a measure, and down, down, up, up, down. There's nothing on beat 3. So that's why this little cowboy-style gallop works a little bit better. Once again, to just review what the double strum is. Often double strum on ukulele, you're using multiple fingers, but you can still do this basic rhythm with just your index finger, and it goes 1 and 2 and that repeats. What I like to do, and sounds traditional, is to do an accent on the up strum. That's a very typical, like anti-Genoa Chiavi style double strum little gallop that you hear in a lot of the up-tempo, even 8th note songs, the olapa rhythm. Imagine ipu. You can kind of emphasize that with those accents. So that'll make your strumming pattern really fit in well, and it gives you that. I often think of when strumming, I think of some sort of percussion instrument in playing this. So thinking of an ipu when you're doing this particular pattern really helps. Really slowly, down, up, down, The trick is you do 2 down ups, and when you do the double strum, the main thing is just lightly ghost it. You don't want to accent those. They're just so light. Sometimes they're just hitting a low string, or the 4th string. You don't have to. It loses the feel, right? That you want to be so soft with the faster strum. So, okay, with all that in mind, we're going to slow it way down, which actually makes kind of doing that strum a little bit more, it's easier to do it faster in a way. But let's take it really slow because we're just learning this. And let's try to play through the whole piece, and I'll call out where we are and where you repeat. So we're going to play each section twice. When we get to the end of measure 15, the second time, we're going to repeat measures 1 through 5 twice, then jump to the end. So let's try it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here comes G7. Remove your 3rd finger. Then that finger goes back and slides back to C. Vamp. Hanaho. Repeat. Thumb, index, thumb, middle. G7. Put the 3rd finger back, slide up to C. Get ready for the next part. Look ahead. Switch to your 1st finger here. 1st finger. Pinky, 3rd, 1st. 3rd finger. Then vamp. Repeat, switch to your 1st finger. It's measure 6. Measure 7. G7. Guide finger there with the 3rd finger. Get ready for the little gallop. Here we go. 1st finger to 2nd. Repeat that. G7. C. Vamp. Repeat. C. Now get ready, we're going to go back to the beginning, to the top here, the capo. G7, C, vamp, G7 to C. Repeat, last time. We're going to take the coda at the end of measure 5. Coda. Slow down here. Then, and then a C chord. All right. So that is Kani Okekai, which is also known as Kamanu, was the song that Auntie Alice Namakelua did a number of. She actually used this progression and sang different melodies over it. And there's a great YouTube video if you look up her when she was 80 years old. She was interviewed on stage sitting in this big, beautiful rattan chair. And she sings a couple songs. Noho Pai Pai, totally different melody than we usually think of with Noho Pai Pai. And a song called Kamanu that she composed that are both based on this chord progression. If you listen to Fred Punahoa or Led Ka'apana or Sunny Lim, listen to the Mauna Loa slack key. That uses this. The Punahoa Special. They're all played in different tunings. Then there's the song called the Wiha Swing, I mentioned that Sonny Chillingworth did, and the song Punahele by Ray Kane. All of those songs use this song structure. Think of this as almost like the blues progression of early Hawaiian music. This template of this little pattern evolved to become the main source of sort of song form and even harmony in a lot of Hawaiian music.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeff. One person had one question, which is, would you mind just showing us one more time the double strum a little bit slow
Oh,
and
yeah.
then a little bit fast.
Sure. Okay, so let's just take a C chord. And it's only a 2-beat pattern that keeps repeating. And so the main thing I want you to remember, it goes 1 and 2 enda. And that repeats for 3 and 4 enda. So 1 and 2 enda. First, it's really good to, when working on strumming patterns or even fingerstyle, is to really identify a rhythm, be able to count it out before you play. There's another way of playing is by ear and by feel, which I think is also very important to be able to learn. Be able to hear something and imitate what you're hearing without even thinking of what it is. You just express it. Both ways are really effective. I find when I run into a dead end and I can't use my ear and something's not working, I try to count it out. So 1 and 2, enda, 3 and 4, enda. We're putting an accent on the 1 and. So 1 and 2, enda, 1 and 2. Even on 2 sometimes. So 1 and 2, enda, 1 and 2, enda. With that in mind, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up. Remember, the last down, up is a very short ghost strum. That's the fast strum. And what you might practice just to get that before we try everything is just go. Do that little gallop. Bump, 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 bump. Light as a feather, letting the tip joint flex. Instead of being really stiff with your hand, just loosen up. Shake your hand out like it's fallen asleep and you're trying to wake it up. A lot of forearm rotation. Really slowly. Now if you do the 8th notes first, that's the basic idea of it. It's easier to hear it, and this is usually used more at medium to fast tempo songs. It's like this. Really slowly. So you can even, sometimes I just mute the strings. Another thing to practice in the car, practice your strumming patterns just on your leg. Right?
Yep. Exactly. That was perfect.
I used to use ticket stub.
Oh, yeah.
Because it had that nice ticky
Yeah, something that has a little bit of resistance.
Yeah.
Whether it's your leg or the ticket stub or whatever.
I have a friend, I call him the flamenco driver, Mitch Chang.
Oh my
guys
gosh,
probably
yes.
know Mitch. I don't know if you've ever been in a car with Mitch when he loves flamenco music as much as he loves ukulele and Hawaiian music and other things. And so he'll blast some classic, amazing Vicente Amigo or, Paco de Lucia or, some flamenco music. And he'll be singing and playing the cajon on the steering wheel.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the basic idea of that double strum. Listen to, as I mentioned, another one of your assignments is to put on Party Hulas by Anticino Kiave. Look on Spotify, have a party. Why not?
I love it.
But listen to you're going to hear about half the songs are going to be done with even 8th notes, the other half are swing. So you'll hear the basic rhythms of, in Hawaiian music, the triplet.
Oh, yeah.
Versus the whole album is just one or the other. It's all in the key of C.
Oh, nice.
Most of it. I think, about every song. So you might have to tune because they didn't have electronic tuners. This might be a little higher or lower. But just grab your instrument and jam along with that. Thinking of playing by ear, if you don't know a particular chord, just get the groove going with your right hand.
Yeah.
That is playing along with the recordings. And that's another thing I do at Ukulele Corner. I create a lot of backtracks because I think that playing along with the recording is the best way to connect in real time, working on rhythm and then working on phrasing and everything together and expression. And I find one of the biggest hurdles for a lot of students is playing something consistently in time. And I mentioned the idea of chaining. You might learn then a little pause before you get to another little break. Trying to make things even out and practicing slowly in real time and thinking one beat ahead or one chord ahead of where you are. That's a really important thing that helps you to do this. What am I going to have to do in measure 2 or the transition from the C to the G7 chord? How can I think ahead? Even though I'm playing these notes right here, I'm thinking of this already. I'm visualizing that in my mind so that there isn't a pause in between. And so practicing transitions, looping them. The next phrase, there's a transition of, but we're using our first finger. I love doing position changes when an open string is being played because you have the sustain of the open string allows your left hand to reset. So I might practice something like this. First position to third position. But I'm constantly trying to think ahead when I'm playing of where does the left hand need to be instead of like in the moment and then the moment passes, right? And then there's that pause. So there are a couple of things you can practice, sort of the art of connecting phrases. That can be part of your practice routine.
Nice. I know we went a little long today. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us. This was a fantastic lesson today. Thank you so much,
so great.
Jeff. This was awesome.
There is extra materials too.
What?
In the packet, just so you know, feel free to check out the extra pages that he
So
that's another lesson we'll get into another time.
And the main thing is make sure you're subscribed to our mailing list because after the concert tomorrow, we'll send out all the links that Jeff mentioned today. We'll try to get that all squared away for you. As well, we will reshare the discount code for Ukulele Corner, and we'll have some other resources listed in that email as well. Yeah, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Hawaii time, 12 noon Pacific, is going to be our season 1 finale of our backyard concert. Jeff did a fantastic concert for us, and we cannot wait to share that with you.
So special.
But thank you again so much for joining us today. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, aloha everyone.
and
Thank you so much
sharing.
for being here. Thanks, Craig and Sarah, for having me. Good fun.
Yeah, of course.
And Sarah, anything else before we head out?
I don't think so. I think that's it. So make sure you join us tomorrow. If you join us in the live chat, by the way, we do have lots of giveaways, including an Ukulele Corner subscription. There's also some swag from Koaloha, GHS strings. You could also win an album of Jeff's. So join us in the live chat tomorrow so that you can be put in the drawing for the fancy ukulele we played earlier. And tomorrow's the exact same time. Yes, 9 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. If you log on early, we'll be on early in the chat, being all excited because this is a really special concert. So definitely join us for it. It'll be a lot of fun.
And again, thank you guys again for your support. Again, we're trying to keep these live streams once a month free for everyone. So thank you guys for purchasing packets and paying it forward, especially with the new Scholar packets.
Yes.
Nice.
Again, if you are just discovering Jeff, we'll have all the information that you can find everything about him and how to follow him and how to support him as well.
Yes.
He is one of our favorites. Jeff, thank you again so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
I hope you guys
All right,
have a
aloha,
wonderful
everyone.
day.
Bye,
See you guys
everybody.
tomorrow morning. Woohoo!
Yay.